Louise Bedford here. I'm so excited to be bringing you another episode of Talking Trading. We'll have Caroline Stephen back on air very shortly, but we've listened to you, we've heard your thoughts. We're so excited about bringing you this new, more flexible way of producing Talking Trading. You've asked for more inspiration, you have asked for trading stories, and we love that we've been able to provide that for you in the past, but using this new format now more than ever. I'm so excited to introduce Gary Schuller to you. Gary is the father of Daniel Schuller. Daniel had me on his podcast last year, and Gary and I have been friends ever since. Gary has had an extensive background, and I'm going to get him to describe this to you in just a moment. But I want you to know that everybody has been shaken up by the pandemic. We have all had to reset goals, and we've all had to display a heck of a lot of resilience and flexibility. So Gary, I have especially asked because he epitomizes resilience. And usually I would be saying we need to speak from our scars and not our wounds so that we've recovered somewhat before we present our story. But in this situation, this is a man in the hunt. And at the very end, we're going to talk to you about how you can get involved in Gary's latest project. Gary, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, firstly, thank you, Louise. I'm here delighted to serve and hopefully give your listeners some real take-home value. So thank you for that introduction. At the age of 19 in England, I lost my left eye. A few months later, my dad committed suicide. And a few months after that, I got divorced. But apart from that, was a good time in my life. And I was in hospital in England, having just lost my left eye, feeling sorry for myself. And the nurse looked to me. She said, "What is your problem?" And I thought, one of us brain damage. How would you feel if you were me? She looked at me, she said, "Lucky, focus on what you've got left as opposed to what you lost." That was a really amazing lesson. But anyway, at the age of 19, in those days, I was a skinhead. I'm returning that way, but not by choice. All over my body and earrings in my ears. I left hospital fairly disgruntled. And I decided I wanted to get a labourer's job, something where I didn't have to think too much. And at the interview, the guy asked me a few questions. He said, despite your appearance, despite your age, I reckon you could get a job as a salesperson. There's one coming up where you get a company car, salary, commission, preferably for a 25-year-old, but I think you could get the job. Do you have a suit? I said, no. He said, borrow one, take those earrings out and do something for your hair. Well, I was a skinhead, what could I do? So I borrowed a suit, polished my head, turned up for the job, got it, and within 6 months, I was the number one salesperson in England for a company called Ryman Contract Stationery, who are still in business and have been now, I think, for about 150 years. I made so much money in one transaction, in one situation, that it enabled me to buy an apartment or a flat in a place called Uxbridge outside of London. That's a story for itself. But subsequent to that, I've been on the world circuit as a speaker for the last 36 years and have learned a lot about what people in business really need to achieve their success. So that's a little bit of a background, just bringing us to date.
Fantastic. Probably about a third of our Talking Trading listeners own their own business, and the other 2/3 are either self-employed or they're full-time traders. I'm sure that there are so many people listening who've already had some level of health, some physical setback, and in fact I've even got a little group of people who've got disabilities that I help to trade effectively. So I think one of the ways that you and I bonded, Gary, it's a bit embarrassing actually when I tell this story, but when we had our very first conversation, you were asking me how I was recovering after my operation on my throat and after not being able to speak easily for the last couple of years. So for everybody listening, you may not realise, but I had 9 months where I couldn't make a sound at all. I had intensive speech therapy. It was really a very dark time. And at the same time, there was a worldwide pandemic and my mother died, and there was also some situations with my youngest daughter when she broke her leg and she had to have 3 operations. It was just a cascade. So as I was telling you, Gary, all of this in our first conversation, I'm talking away, nattering away, because how nice is it to be able to speak again, saying how blessed I feel to have recovered from this operation and to be able to present. And you actually mentioned that you had just gone through an amputation.
Correct.
Can you, if you're comfortable with this, can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's impacted your life?
Yeah, so life is often full of opportunities, and I use that word very carefully. One of the things that you'll hear me talk about today is mindset and vocabulary. So about a year ago now, I got a little, what appeared to be just a little slight thing on my foot. So I put some cream on, and a week or two later, it was still there, and it got infected. And I decided I'd go to the hospital, thinking, that I'd come home in a couple of hours with a bandage. Well, 2 months later, I came home and I'd had my left leg amputated. And what had apparently happened, we'd been in Mornington. I'd had a property there for 30 years where we raised our family of children. And apparently in Mornington, there was a virus, an ulcer virus that went around that if you caught it, it was sort of a flesh-eating thing. And unbeknown to me, according to what the doctors told me, that's what I actually caught. But, one of the things that I said to you when we got to Bonn, Louise, was that life is always about, opportunity. And I remember the doctor, female doctor, came to me and she said, oh, almost like, I'd like a loaf of bread, please. She said, oh, yes, we'll have to amputate that. Sorry, run that one past me one more time. I didn't quite hear that. Oh, yes, we're going to have to amputate. And it was like no warning, no nothing. And I said, what do you mean amputate? It's infected and we have to do it now. And, there was in fact, I had about 3 or 4 operations where they had to keep taking more and more off until eventually they caught the poison. Fortunately, I've still got my knee and a little bit of my left leg below that. So I'm due to go and have some rehab soon and get a leg. But, I remember that I was faced with that. And okay, as a Christian and a believer, my faith was what really pulled me through. I simply said, well, Lord, I'm grateful for being alive. Thank you. And I started to actually, people thought I was just saying it, but I was starting to become more grateful than ever before. And I actually started to appreciate things more than ever before. And a lot of people saying, oh, gee, you'll probably come to a time soon where you'll just fall flat on your face and you'll be, you'll have to grieve. Well, that hasn't happened. I'm actually more grateful than ever before. So what's the lesson? Well, the lesson, I suppose, is that each and every day we need to make every moment count. We take often for life granted. We take life for granted often, and we don't tell people that are close to us we love them, how much we appreciate them, and all those important things. And just digressing, if I may, Louise, I remember when my first child was born, because my father had committed suicide, I vowed that if ever I was blessed with children, I would tell them each and every day how much I love them. And I can tell you can ask them, I've got 4, that's been the case. I talk to my children, I tell them they're precious, I write them poetry, I write them letters, because I never want them to ever be in a position where they ever question what was my father's commitment, our father's commitment to his love for us. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'm so excited. Subsequent to that, I've now got married again. And when I met this beautiful woman, the first thing I said to her is, before we catch up, you need to know about my leg. And she said, so what's the problem? So, it's been a real blessing in many ways.
Oh, Gary, I'm amazed. So many people let that tiny little grain of sand in their shoe stop them from walking forward, and you've actually lost a leg and you're all systems go. I find it inspiring, but it also makes me question a few things. Firstly, because I've also had a couple of health things go wrong in my life, I think that was interesting to me that you've been able to pick yourself up so quickly. It took me much longer each event that I've had to pick myself up. Why do you think that would be? How have you been able to do this?
I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think I was trained to think this way when I lost my left eye. And when my father committed suicide, I think already at that early age of 19, I was faced with decisions and attitudes that I had to adopt, adapt, and improve upon. And so my whole life has been, dare I say, and you can see behind me, we have a thing called the Warrior Club. It's really about mindset and attitude. And when I look at life, we're here for, let's say most of us can get to 80, and most don't, by the way. Statistically, men die around 72 on average. But let's say we get to 80. And here I am at 60 plus. If we use football Australian rules as an analogy, there are 4 quarters, 20 minutes, 40, 60, 80. I'm already in the third quarter of my life, if you look at that analogy. So the question you have to ask is, what did I do in the first 2 quarters, and how am I going to change and make the next quarter even better? And I think that people sort of often squander their life. They don't embrace it and seize the moment and enjoy every moment. And even when we have something, as you've experienced, that isn't, I mean, that would be dreadful. But look where you are now. You've come through, you've got a voice, and that's going to inspire hundreds, thousands, millions, and change people's perception. So I actually think, as a believer, that God places people in positions often where they're trialed, and when they come through, they're able to then share with other people a bit of inspiration. Say, hey, you can do this. This is an opportunity for you to step up and understand that you are blessed. You've just said this, but look at the fact that you've got children. What a blessing that you've got children. Or look at this, what an opportunity you've got. And that's, I guess, how I see life. It is a paradigm shift. I remember when I first went to rehab to get my leg fitted, which I'm about to go and have actually, so I'll learn to walk again. I remember the gentleman who was head of that department said, oh, amputees. And I said, look, I get that, but I'm actually not going to call myself an amputee. And he actually said, I like that. I said, I'd like to. It's not, I understand the concept, but I'm a guy with one leg who's about to get a second leg. That's a change of the way I like to see it. Because if I see myself as an amputee, for me personally, then it's like buying into that whole situation, where I rather look at it from a different perspective.
And that does strike to the heart of identity as well, because you grew to see yourself as somebody who was capable and strong and taking on new opportunities, and having that as your identity. I wonder if that's how you've been able to adopt this new way of going forward. Yeah.
I think, look, it's interesting. When we first brought in the concept of the warrior, I looked up the word in the dictionary, and it's neither male or female. A warrior can be male and female, as you can see from the 2 lines behind me. And I like that, because I like the fact that men and women can be warriors. And it's really about attitude. It's not about your build or how tough you are. It's really about an attitude to say, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not looking on my left or right or behind me. I'm not interested in what the soothsayers say. That's their prerogative. But what I'm about is, let's make this happen. And that's it. It's really an attitude.
Actually, apparently my name in German means battle maid, which is a bit of a warrior attitude there, I think, as well. Look, one of the things that strikes me about you as well is, because you've had such a varied background, building those skill set blocks has been so important to you, but also you've done this with such integrity. I've been querying this whole concept of integrity lately. It's interesting when you meet somebody that has integrity, often it strikes that chord with you. You know it. It's not something that they have to describe for you. You get it. So I think there's integrity on a few different levels. There's integrity, of course, honesty. That's the one that everybody thinks of. But I also think it comes down to a few other areas. Doing what you say you were going to do. That is so important. That almost personal integrity as a contract within your own body, within your own visceral self. There's also time integrity. So knowing what your day is going to look like in advance, so you're not bashed around by circumstances. I'm curious with your new goal here, Gary. You have got a huge goal. I'm going to be a presenter at the expo.com.au for you. I know you have got 23 other world-class performers as expo presenters. I want to talk about the ability to reset goals. You have got this as, I think, one of the most ambitious goals I've heard of, to be open with you. So can you discuss your new goal with the expo and integrity and resetting.
Yeah, and integrity can be a journey. Just before I answer your other question or make comment, integrity can be a journey. When I look back in my own life, I've had to learn things to do, and keeping your word is one thing, as you just said, and time commitment. Punctuality is crucial to me. I can honestly say I've never been late in my life ever. But I've certainly had to learn other aspects of my life to do what I promise, etc., and the journey along the way. But let me take our listener back, if I may, to 2013, which was another one of those epiphanies and life-changing moments, which was 9 years ago. I was in South Melbourne running a workshop because at that stage I was still a prolific speaker on the world circuit. I was running a workshop on this particular day. I looked at one of the gentlemen participating and I said to him, you know what? I'm concerned about you. And he said, what is it? I said, well, I'm more excited about your business than you are. And he nervously giggled. But as I walked away from that particular workshop and walked toward the South Melbourne market to collect my car, I looked at the market and I thought, what if I could create an environment where there was hustle and bustle and excitement and bring people into this place of loving their business? Let's face it, starting a business for the sake of starting a business is not really what it's about. It's about vision. Where are you going? Mission. How are you going to achieve it? Purpose. Why do you do what you do? And loving it. And I realized most people didn't and don't. So I started the business marketplace, which is now the Business Marketplace Global. And the commitment that I made to the members that joined and are still there is to facilitate connections for them, to introduce them to other people so they could do more business. And that was what we started to do. And then in conjunction with that, we would run a physical expo. So I'm getting to your point. And we did this successfully for a long time until 2 years ago when COVID hit. And obviously, particularly people like you and I, where we're in the event business or speaking business, they had to stop. So suddenly I had to discover a thing called Zooms. And, in fairness, Zoom has been amazing. It's a great tool and resource. But about 4 months ago, in January of this year, so not long ago, I was sitting at home and I was asking myself the tough question. What's my point of difference now? Because in the last few years, every man and his dog is now running an event. Everyone's running an online event. Everyone's being pulled from here to pillar to post to be on this event, to be on that event. And I realized maybe our events were better than some or not, but we didn't really have a point of difference. And as serendipity would have it, I got a guy contacted me from England. We got talking and one thing led to another, and he talked about some software that he had and ran a virtual expo, and they got 37,000 attendees.
Ooh.
And I'm thinking, wow. Cut a long story short, he introduced me to the creator of the software, and we purchased the license rights to this particular software. And what you were alluding to was, excuse me, in July of this year, we're going to be running what we call a virtual expo, which is effectively where we believe we'll get a minimum of 10,000 attendees, 24 world-class speakers, of which we're blessed with you being one, 24 workshops and 400 exhibitors. And again, as you said, very, very big ambition. I've still got people saying, are you sure you're going to get there? You're going to make it? And it's like, I'm going for it. There's nothing in my mind that would question that we're going to achieve this. And, it's not a question of whether, it's just a question of how. What do we need to do to make this work? But the point is, when you get behind a vision like that and you get excited, other people start to buy into that excitement. And that's what's happened. Through the grace of my son, Daniel, I've met you, and you've been, and I'm not saying this because I'm on your podcast, it's absolutely factual. You've been an amazing help to me already by giving me some ideas about different ways to present and word and introductions to other people that are going to be on part of our speaking circuit. So, I've been blessed by meeting you anyway, regardless. But that's it in a nutshell. The virtual expo is a whole new thing. And I've even had people say, I just don't get it. So where will I be? Will I be in a venue? No, it's virtual. So where will I be? Well, you'll be behind your PC or on your phone or on the beach or in a coffee shop. You can pick it up on a phone, on a laptop, on an iPad, whatever you want. So that whole new way of thinking and seeing things is a new opportunity for us. And we actually believe, I think we're the first that are pioneering this in Australia. But certainly we're only a handful in the world doing what we're doing now.
That is so exciting. And actually, quite a few talking trading people who've been on our show are actually presenting for you. We've got Samantha Riley, and we've got Mari Burgess and Trav Bell. And I think John Dwyer is going to do what
Yeah,
do you call
indeed.
it? Yes, indeed. So that will be lovely as well. So to get your free ticket, go to theexpo.com.au and order yourself a free ticket. So I just still want to get back to your background and to how we can apply these lessons to the trading arena, Gary. But I definitely want to encourage everybody to go to theexpo.com.au and grab yourself a free ticket. So those 3 days, Gary, it's July.
20, 21st, 22nd.
Fantastic. And from everything that you've been shaping up here, it's going to be not just for business people who are owning their own business, it's also anybody with ambition, with a dream, anything that they're trying to achieve outside of the ordinary. If you've been stuck in a bit of a COVID funk over the last couple of years and you've felt those walls close in, now's the time to look outside of your comfort zone, develop some of those skill sets that we were talking about so it can push you on to the next level, whatever arena that is in. I think it's just brilliant that you've got in Mari Burgess to talk about leadership so that you can level up your management skills. I mean, she, in essence, I just love that woman. She is going to take us through processes so that we can get our career in order. And I think that if you've already got a position that you're working at is a not to be missed segment. So I want to talk about some of the lessons that my traders can implement from what you've said. There's a few things here that are buzzing through my mind. And actually, I'm more used to being interviewed than to running the interview. That's why it's good that this is a conversation, Gary.
Absolutely. And absolutely. The beauty part about this is no right or wrong. We're just conversing, you and I.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I think my traders tend to have trouble with is that when things are going wrong in other areas of their life, how do they keep a cool, logical head with their main stream? So, if we take your life as an example, you're going into rehab to be able to get your prosthetic fitted. You've got things that are happening outside of the expo.com.au, but you're still able to apply that focus to the expo.com.au. How are you able to do that? What are you doing from a mindset perspective that my traders could implement and learn from?
I think that's just a great question. And I really think, without being flippant, the answer is focus. So let me elaborate on that. What does that mean? It's really about what is it that you're wanting to achieve. So like you said, if your traders are taken off guard for a moment because of something that's happening on their left or right, they've got to then say, okay, what do I need to do to stay focused on my trading? And how do I deal with the things that are happening around me? What extra time do I need to commit here or there in order to make this a reality and to get through? So, for example, in anticipation of going in for rehab, they made it very clear that, you're coming in for rehab, not to run a business from the ward. And I get that, but they said, we understand you've got this big event. So what you'll have to do is focus on your leg and then work around that for your business. So I'm already thinking, and this is a really interesting situation because this is going to create controversy now for your listener. I'm already thinking, okay, I'll go in and do the leg stuff, and during the night, I'll do my night shift. Now, most people go, oh, yes, but you need your 6 or your 8 hours sleep, and medically it's proven, blah, blah, blah. And maybe that is true. I'm not going to get into that. But the controversy part is that I don't see it that way. I will do whatever it takes in order to make sure that I get my leg, that I can walk out of the ward in 2 to 3 weeks, and at the same time keep everything going according to the commitment I've made to the virtual expo. So it means that I have to refocus. I've got to change a few things, adapt to the new situation. But because I'm focused, it will be done. So the advice I would give to your traders is that life is never consistent with, there's always going to be obstacles that will come your way that you can then convert into an opportunity. That happens. Your situation, my situation, and every person that you can imagine has something happen in his or her life that's not necessarily expected and not always great. but it's how you deal with it and how you see it that makes a big difference. That sounds contrived and a bit of a cliche, but it's still nevertheless the truth. The fact of the matter is, and this is the point, I lost my left leg, so it's not going to come back. So I can sit there and wallow in self-pity and cry and blame the world, but the leg's still not there. Or I can say, hey, you know what? This is a great opportunity to become an even more amazing warrior and prove to people that with one eye and one leg, you can make a significant difference. And that's how I choose to look at my life. That's what I'd be saying to your traders now, is that what can you thank God for? What can you be blessed for? And even if your trades go down a little bit, how can you deal with that and say, okay, it's a little hiccup, but I'm excited about the future. And if I look more carefully and study more and listen with Louise's advice, I'll get further ahead. So let's just keep going.
I love that. I can see you doing another aspect here that perhaps we could discuss. You've got a really big goal here, but you've broken it down into very small chunks, really small chunks, things that you can do per day level of chunks. I think our traders often find it daunting. They go from zero, where they haven't put any trades on, to thinking they have to be a full-time trader next week. And perhaps this is something we can take from Gary's experiences here as well. Just looking for those common lessons between that big goal and how to actually achieve it from Gary's life. As a trader, if you've got a big goal, break it down into tiny little bite-sized chunks and go to experts to help you. Like Gary knows that I've done a few events in my time. So for that aspect, I feel that it's wonderful that you've been able to take some of my thoughts there and implement them, but break down that big goal into tiny little subsets so that you can actually achieve each subset, get that endorphin rush. It'll encourage you to go on to that next tiny little goal. That sounds to me what you've been doing here, Gary. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so the 1st of May, which was yesterday, we'd already planned that I'd given ourselves 10 weeks, because 10 is easy to divide by, and that would still give us another 2 or 10 days thereafter to get, before the expo, everything fine-tuned and finalised. So the 10 weeks, divided that by 10,000, which is the amount of attendees we want. Well, that's obvious what we need per week if you divide 10 weeks by 10,000. And we took the 400 booths and we divided that by 10. So we knew on a weekly basis exactly what we needed to achieve and what we have to achieve. And then we divided that by 7 days. So I know literally on a daily basis how many tickets we need to have redeemed and how many expo booths that we need to have purchased. The other thing, though, that I would say, apart from bite-sized pieces, which is what you've just said, is the importance of having a vision. And in fact, it says in the Old Testament, without a vision, the people perish. And perish meant then to die. What it really means, though, I think is, and I believe that's what often happens with suicide. I think my father didn't have anything to be hopeful for. His life was in that moment so bleak and so black that the option for him, he thought, was to take his life. And I think when you look at some of your traders or some of the people I know, when they get down in their life, it's probably because maybe they need to revisit hope. They need to say, what is my vision? What am I really trying to achieve? What do I need to do, exactly as you just said, to break it down into bite-sized pieces? Look at what's just happened as an experience. What can I learn from that experience? What would I do differently next time? How can I embrace it and go, well, you know what? I'm still alive. I'm still well. In fact, I'm going to go and buy myself a cappuccino. I'm going to actually celebrate this moment and just enjoy and think about a strategy. You see, I love chess. I love playing chess. And chess is really about strategy. It really is. It's about thinking ahead, 2, 3, 4 moves ahead of your opponent. And I believe life's very similar. You've got to keep thinking about, what do I need to do? And if this were to happen, what would be the next decision? How can I manage this? What can I do to look at it from a different perspective? And it's the same with the team that work with me. My team, I sort of talk to them about strategy and the importance of being ahead of the game, making sure that you're up early, that you're already thinking and writing things down and looking at the checklist and ticking them off. And that's really what you're asking.
It is, I think that ability to have that vision, to hold that vision for the people who don't have the vision around you is so important. And you've been able to do that for your children as well. I just find Daniel is a breath of fresh air in my life, and he's an ambitious thing too, isn't he? Gary, what legacy are you looking to leave for your children?
When my youngest, Philippa, was about 7, she came home from primary school. And this was maybe a lovely story. And she was upset. And I said, baby, what's the matter? She said, oh, Daddy, my best friend, I can't recall her name, we'll call her Chloe. My best friend, Chloe, doesn't want to speak to me today. And I said, what happened? Oh, this happened and that happened. And I said, well, this is how I spoke to my little girl at this, who was 7. I said, well, what would you like to have happen tomorrow? What would be an ideal outcome? So she said, oh, I'd like to be friends with her. I said, well, if Daddy gave you a few ideas as to how to make that happen, would you be open to implementing it? Yes, Daddy. So I said, okay, what I want you to do tomorrow is when you go to the playground, go to Chloe and say, Chloe, what did I do to upset you? What would it take for us to be friends again? So anyway, to cut a long story, and then listen to what Chloe says and then say, so if I do that, how do we mend and make this happen? So to cut a long story short, she came home the next day and she was so happy. Oh, we're friends. I said, what happened, baby? She said, well, I did what you said, Daddy. I convened a meeting in the playground and I went to Chloe and I said, Chloe, what did I do? What can we do to become friends again? How can we fix this and make it go away and blah, blah, blah. And listen to what she had to say and we made it happen. Now, the legacy to me is about teaching people how to ask better questions, to be more interested in the other person than yourself, to listen to what people are really saying and listen rather than hear. There's a big difference. Hearing is a noise. Listening is being in tune to what a person's saying. So, for example, if I say to you, how are you? And I'm just expecting to go good and I'm ready to move on from the next part. Whereas I say, how are you? And you say, not too good today. I need to hear that, listen to what you've just said, and then say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, you know what? I had a bit of a frog in my throat. Oh, wow. Tell me about that. And it's at that moment that we bond again. We bond at the real essence of the importance of you and the value that I place on you. So the legacy I would want to leave, and I think to some extent already have, is in making sure that my children understand the importance of asking questions, being in tune to the needs and wants and desires of other people. And that all things are possible. I really believe that. That's the biggest thing. All things are possible. And yes, shit happens, for want of a better expression. Life doesn't always go according to plan, but it's not about what happens to you that matters in life. It's what you do about what happens. It's what you do about what happens that makes a big difference.
You are an inspiration, my friend. So if you're listening to this interview and you're trying to work out what to apply, let's think of some of the things that Gary has mentioned. Think carefully about the questions you ask other people and listen to their answers. Have a firm vision, a strong vision, something that scares you, something that makes you trembly inside for what your future can look like. And break that vision down into tiny little micro blocks. And probably the big thing is, if things are going wrong, reset a goal. Find something outside that line to inspire you and to lead you on to greatness. Gary, any other parting words?
No, I think just to maybe finish on a humorous story. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
When I first lost my leg, my son came into the hospital and he said, I love you, Dad. He said, it's quite amazing. I had tubes hanging out of my nose and my arms and my mouth. And he said, it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. As soon as the phone rings, you pick it up. Good morning. How may I help you? And anyway, I laughed, but I said to him, Danny, I said, I got to tell you a story. I had to do the 3 S's today. And he said, what are they? I said, shit, shower and shave in the hospital. And I said, I knew when my life had come to its lowest denomination when I was finally in the toilet and in the hospital, that you have a door that you can lock, but they can also unlock on the other side. And I said, I'm sitting on the toilet and there's a knock on the door and it's the nurse. I said, hello, how may I help you? And the nurse said, I'd just like to come in and take your blood. I said, well, I'm actually on the toilet. That's okay. And she walked in and I said, at that moment, Daniel, I realized life is a blessing. There was nothing else. But we laughed and we chuckled about that. But the point I'm making is that life at the end of the day is worth celebrating. It's a joy to be alive. It's a privilege. It's an honor. And we don't know when our time is up. So let's make today count. That's it in a nutshell.
Beautiful. Talking trading listeners, you need a bit more of Gary Schuller in your life. You absolutely do. I know I do. Come to theexpo.com.au, get your free ticket. You can see me present. I'll be taking you through how to spot an uptrending stock in less than an hour for that whole presentation, and you'll be able to go through your existing portfolio. You'll be able to work out the ones that are likely to make you money in the future. And if you're brand new to trading, I'll show you how to get started. So thanks so much for your time, Gary.
That's been an honor. Thank you, Louise.